So, we're back with the iPhone 5C once again in this video, and we're going to be talking about why this phone was pretty much a huge failure. Now, if you haven't already seen my last video on this phone, I made it about a month ago, but I basically talked about how it's been forgotten by a lot of people. Be sure to check it out if you haven't already. But back to the video, let's talk about why this phone was pretty much a failure for Apple back in 2013 when it came out. So this article actually does a pretty good job summarizing all the reasons, but basically think about it this way. You have a lot of people pressuring you to build a cheaper phone, and Apple basically decides to use cheaper materials like plastic, and they repackage them into a brand new design using last year's iPhone chip. And this phone was basically an iPhone 5 inside of a plastic body. That's pretty much what the iPhone 5C was. Now, don't get me wrong, this phone was great, but it just felt like a copy of the previous year's iPhone 5. It just wasn't anything game-changing, and it was made out of plastic, and most importantly, it was too expensive. Now, take a look at these two phones. They both came out at the same exact time, but the iPhone 5S on the right side that you see here was just $100 more. So basically for $100 extra, you were getting the latest Apple chip, Touch ID, all the faster speeds, and basically all the flagship specs of 2013. And it makes me think a lot about whether Apple should have just continued selling the iPhone 5 at a lower price, but I don't think this would really work because the iPhone 5 was extremely similar to the iPhone 5S, so it would be really hard to tell these phones apart from a distance. Now, even though the 5C was a pretty big flop, it wasn't necessarily the end of affordable iPhones. And as you guys know, Apple did release the iPhone SE in 2016. But I know this phone isn't an SE, by the way. I just don't have one with me right now, but we're going to pretend that it's an SE. But basically, this phone came out a few months after the release of the iPhone 6S and the iPhone 6S Plus. And what really made this phone appealing was the fact that it shared the same A9 chip, and of course was $250 cheaper than the base 16GB iPhone 6S model. And sometimes it makes me think a lot about whether Apple should have made the iPhone 5C with the same exact chip that the iPhone 5S had, and would it have been cheaper, would it have been more expensive? It's hard to tell because this phone kind of was rushed to market, so that's why a lot of people had a lot of things to say about this phone. But anyways guys, I hope you enjoyed this video with a little history of the iPhone 5C and why this phone was a pretty big failure for Apple. By the way, I did want to let you guys know this is my last video of 2021. I'll be back this Sunday with my next video, and I hope you guys have a happy new year.